Hello, friends. Welcome back to At Home with the Lectionary.
We're so glad you're joining us tonight because we are recording at nighttime.
Tonight. That's right.
Tonight.
And if you're listening and it's not nighttime, where and when you are, stop. You have to wait for night. You have to join us at night.
Well, last time it felt so sleepy to try and do this in the afternoon. We can do morning,
afternoon.
We can do night, but afternoon, whew,
afternoon is apparently
rough.
You just listen like 2x speed. That's okay. They can handle that. Okay, well, here we are. This is Proper 25, and we're in Year A still, as always. And I'm curious to see, I remember last week, we looked ahead to the Old Testament passage because we're like, where does it go next? Does it go to God revealing himself to Moses in a certain way? It doesn't. And I was saying, does it go in the gospel passage onto Jesus astounding the Sadducees next with his answer? It doesn't. So get ready to do some hyper jumps.
Well, and we're headed toward All Saints as well in a couple weeks, right?
We're almost there.
We're kind of coming to the end of ordinary time.
We are.
2 weeks, I think.
26.
We still have.
I think you're right. Oh, closest to the. Okay. Yes. Yeah. No. The next one.
Time.
Next time is All Saints Sunday.
Okay. Wow.
Fun.
It must be fall.
All
right.
Absolutely.
Well,
absolutely.
Any introductory matters? I don't think so. We've really tried to.
We will next time.
Clip to it
because we'll talk about All Saints and things like that. So let's jump right in, shall we?
Yes. I will open us in prayer with collect tonight.
Great.
Aaron, the Lord be with you.
And also with you.
Friends and listeners, the Lord be with you. Almighty and everlasting God, increase in us the gifts of faith, hope, and charity, and that we may obtain what you promise, make us love what you command. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you in the Holy Spirit, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
Amen. I'm just now realizing I was not ready to read. I get to be our first reader here.
From Deuteronomy 34, 1 through 12, and then a few excerpts from Psalm 90.
Excellent. Well, we have really jumped ahead quite a bit here in Deuteronomy. This is going to be the end, the death of Moses.
Closing of Deuteronomy.
Yeah, okay. Absolutely. So here we go. Deuteronomy 34, verses 1 through 12. And if anyone's interested, I'm reading from the New International Version. Then Moses climbed Mount Nebo from the plains of Moab to the top of Pisgah, across from Jericho. There the Lord showed him the whole land, from Gilead to Dan, all of Naphtali, the territory of Ephraim and Manasseh, all the land of Judah as far as the Mediterranean Sea, the Negev, and the whole region from the valley of Jericho, the city of palms, as far as Zoar. Then the Lord said to him, "This is the land I promised on oath to Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob when I said, I will give it to your descendants. I've let you see it with your own eyes, but you will not cross over into it." And Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in Moab, as the Lord had said. He buried him in Moab, in the valley opposite Beth Peor, but to this day no one knows where his grave is. Moses was 120 years old when he died, yet his eyes were not weak, nor his strength gone. The Israelites grieved for Moses in the plains of Moab 30 days, until the time of weeping and mourning was over. Now, Joshua, the son of Nun, was filled with the spirit of wisdom, because Moses had laid hands on him. So the Israelites listened to him, and did what the Lord had commanded Moses. Since then, no prophet has risen in Israel like Moses, whom the Lord knew face to face, who did all those signs and wonders the Lord sent him to do in Egypt, to Pharaoh and to all his officials, and to this whole land. For no one has ever shown the mighty power or performed the awesome deeds that Moses did in the sight of all Israel. Here ends the reading. The response appointed comes from Psalm 90. It's Psalm 90, verses 1 through 6 and 13 through 17. I'm reading from the 1979 Book of Common Prayer Psalter. Lord, you have been our refuge from one generation to another. Before the mountains were brought forth, or the land and the earth were born, from age to age, you are God. You turn us back to dust and say, "Go back, O child of earth." For 1,000 years in your sight are like yesterday when it is past, and like a watch in the night. You sweep us away like a dream. We fade away suddenly like the grass. In the morning it is green and flourishes. In the evening it is dried up and withered. Return, O Lord. How long will you tarry? Be gracious to your servants. Satisfy us by your loving kindness in the morning. So shall we rejoice and be glad all the days of our life. Make us glad by the measure of the days that you afflicted us, in the years in which we suffered adversity. Show your servants your works and your splendor to their children. May the graciousness of the Lord our God be upon us. Prosper the work of our hands. Prosper our handiwork. Here ends the psalm.
Lovely pairing there. That's a psalm of Moses.
Oh, yes, it's a psalm of Moses. Thank you for catching that for me. I did not, because where I'm reading from. When you read from the Psalter, you don't get those little notes.
And a psalm of communal lament, I think.
Yeah.
Okay, so there's Moses. What would that have been like as he climbs the mountain and sees the land spread out?
I just
and
feel
what
like
a long trajectory to get there.
At 120, it feels like a finish line. I think it feels so satisfying.
I did the work. Well, and it's interesting to hear, I think the NASB maybe says, establish the work of our hands. NET translates make our endeavors successful. What did at the end of Psalm?
Yeah, the Psalter says establish the work of our hands, establish our handiwork. I always have loved that.
And just thinking, there it was. Moses who did all, as Deuteronomy 34 says, did all the signs and wonders.
For me,
what a journey.
The thing that comes to my mind is I've run one marathon. And the joke, by the way, the standing joke is, do you know how you can tell who has run a marathon?
No, sorry, you were waiting for my...
Yeah, we're doing this. Okay. This is the shtick. And you say, no.
Taking a drink. No, how, Aaron?
You go, don't worry, they'll tell you. That's the answer. And it's very true. It's such a formative thing, honestly, because it's a very difficult thing to run a marathon. And your first, I don't know if everyone's experience is like this, but mine, for the first half of the race, you're thinking about pace, you're excited, you've got goals in mind. And honestly, for the last, half of the whole thing, you go from, I just need to not stop to oh my goodness, where is the finish line? Yeah. And I write that onto Moses when I think about this passage. I just think, what a journey. What a journey.
Well, and he would have been 80.
Right. He was called out of retirement to do this task.
Out of all his anticipation of his youth, then so many years kind of quiet life in the wilderness.
This is his third life.
Patient life.
Yes.
And then this.
Yeah.
With all the wilderness wanderings, all the grumbling, all the difficulties with Pharaoh, all of it.
Yeah, he does his all the way through his adult years as this, sort of nobleman, if you will, in Egypt.
Right.
Then he does all of his latter years, as a shepherd in Midian. And then he, again, like I said, called out of retirement to do, people nowadays talk about their third 30. He's doing his third 40 here, called into that, to do this. That's where he begins at the end there, where many people would have placed the finish line. He has to now begin the long journey. It's quite the thing.
Well, and he has quite the eulogy here.
Oh, it's spectacular.
And
it's the end of the Pentateuch is his eulogy.
And that that no prophet ever again arose in Israel like Moses, who knew the Lord face to face.
Yeah.
What a calling. Well,
it's I think an intentional contrast to last week, where the Lord said, no one can see me face to face. And Marissa, just upon reflection, I realized with last week, the connection, we were talking about kind of what are some of the connections, and we were kind of searching, trying to find them among the readings. I realized last week, you have God saying that to Moses, no one can see me face to face. And then you have Jesus saying to his detractors, whose likeness or whose face is on it. And them saying to him, you don't care about the opinion of man, which I think I meant, maybe I didn't mention this last week. I don't know if I did, but the Greek behind that is you don't look upon the face.
Oh, interesting.
Isn't that fascinating?
So some wordplay.
There's this wordplay going on here of where they're saying to him, you don't look upon the face, and he holds up the coin and he says, whose face is this?
That's
and he tells
cool.
them all implicitly, you bear the face of God.
Yeah.
And all that
You're
is
made in his
captured
image, yeah.
made in his image. And all of that is this kind of odd echo to the Old Testament reading last week of God saying to Moses, you can't see my face and live. And this week, Moses being described as one who saw God face to face. Oh, it's just, there's a lot of layers there.
There are
Isn't
a
that
lot
beautiful?
of layers. That is. And we have, Joshua commissioned here, who's full of the spirit of wisdom.
Yeah.
And Moses is placing his hands on him, visual passing of the leadership. But Joshua's also been
I forgot.
in the tabernacle with the Lord as well.
Yes.
He stayed in the tabernacle.
We heard that last week, I think.
Yes. And or the week before.
The week before, maybe. Yeah.
So yeah, what a heritage. I used to, when I was younger, I used to feel bad for Moses. Like, oh, how hard it would be to look into the land
and not get to go there.
But
no way.
I
anymore.
wonder if he was just
the older I get, the more I'm like, it's funny, we're middle age, and you start to taste that sense of like, it's good for the younger generation to have their turn.
Right.
You feel a little bit like they have things to offer that I just don't have in me, or I just don't have it in the tank some days like I used to.
Well, and I think, this
at
is
120,
not in the scripture, but I do think there are qualities that different generations can offer, and unique things that they bring in each time they've been given. So
do you, there's a lot of kind of like the deep symbology or deep symbolism of the Old Testament stuff. Yeah, not symbologyism, but the deep symbols of some of this Old Testament stuff. Do you make anything of the fact that Joshua is the one who leads them into the promised land, and Joshua is the same
Jesus'
name as
name.
Yeshua, as Jesus?
I certainly think.
Do you think God's just having fun?
I don't know, but I certainly think when they were told you shall name him Yeshua, that would have had significance. It's not, I know
out of the wilderness.
I believe it was a common name, but I think like these other echoes that Jesus went down to Egypt, and out of Egypt I've called my son, all these things I think would have been noteworthy.
Yes.
So yeah, I think there's intentionality there. I don't think that's accidental, and it means, doesn't Yeshua mean Savior?
It means the Lord saves.
The Lord saves.
Yeah. How cool is that?
Yeah. So I think it's curious too that here at the end of Moses' life, Egypt, he never returns, except, he goes back to deliver the people, but that's it,
Yeah.
Those first 40 were there, and then no more.
Yeah, no, it makes me think very much of the distinction between David and Solomon, that like David is to do the warring in the lands, but therefore God says is a man of blood, and he's not the one to build the temple, and that is the one whose name means peace, right? There's this sense of like different chapters have different significances.
Yeah.
So Moses whose name means drawn out of the water. I can get caught up in all of these things a bit too much, but he is the one who leads them through the water of the Red Sea. Is the iconic moment more than anything, I think, in Moses' lifetime, in my opinion. Of course, he's named drawn out of the water because he, as a baby, or a very young, a baby, is drawn out of the water, but by one of Pharaoh's daughters. But the naming of these things, fascinating to me. Okay, and all I have to say about the psalm is, what a psalm.
It's a beautiful one. I love that. Yeah, I was going to note too that Moses is designated in verse 5, how he's remembered out of all that he's done. Well, he's remembered as a prophet, but in verse 5 it says, so Moses, the servant of the Lord, died there in the land of Moab. And
there you go. Amen.
Think,
Preach that.
So yes, the psalm is beautiful. I love this psalm. This is the lectionary skips over the teach us to number our days portion of it, but it is a good, I think, New Year's psalm.
It's a good New Year's psalm. Yeah. Teach us to number our days.
Yeah. Reflection.
Well, would you lead us over to Leviticus?
I will. I still remember.
Is there something else you want to say?
Well, I was just going to say about that psalm. I still remember I took, I've maybe mentioned this before. So Dr. Bruce Walke is at our parish now. And after he started coming, now it's
for
been,
like 8 years.
Yeah, a while. Yeah. But after he started coming, one day I was looking through some old seminary coursework, And I found his name on this. I had taken a remote learning class on the book of Psalms like a decade before, and I hadn't remembered the professor's name. But lo and behold, it was Bruce Waltke, and I had the privilege of going to him and being like, I took a class from you 10 years ago, and it was so meaningful. I mean, if you've heard him teach on the Psalms, you'll know what I mean. But I think of this psalm often because I believe, if I'm remembering correctly, he talked in his lectures about literally numbering his days as an exercise.
Yeah, as an exercise.
And I found that so meaningful to do that. And I occasionally will still do it on New Year's, but to tally them up, the days you've lived. None of this is guaranteed, but the idea of should you live into your old age, possibly the remaining days, but really, I found it really meaningful to tally the days you've already been given.
To just note the gift that you've already
number
received
of days, So teach us to number our days. So anyway.
Yeah. Was it say, our days may come to 70 years or 80 if our strength endures? Bruce mentioned that when he looked at that, he thought, well, I think my strength will endure. So he numbered it at 80.
He numbered it at 80.
He went for 80. He mentioned that when he, on his 80th birthday, he said, I had to go back and put a new chart together. I didn't know what to do. Don't know how many to count at that point. Bruce is 93 at this time.
Can we say that? Should we edit that out?
That's public information.
Is it? Okay.
He's got a Wikipedia page. Yeah.
Oh, that's true. Okay.
Yeah. He's not sheepish about his age. So anyways, that's beautiful.
Yeah.
Beautiful psalm.
All right. Well, we are going to move over to the track 2 readings, which place us in Leviticus.
Yes.
Chapter 19, verses 1 through 2, and then 15 through 18, and then Psalm 1. The Lord spoke to Moses, "Speak to the whole congregation of the Israelites and tell them, you must be holy because I, the Lord your God, am holy." And over to verse 13. "You must not oppress your neighbor to commit robbery against him. You must not withhold the wages of the hired laborer overnight until morning. You must not curse a deaf person or put a stumbling block in front of a blind person. You must fear your God. I am the Lord. You must not deal unjustly in judgment. You must neither show partiality." Am I reading the wrong passage?
You added a couple.
Added a little bit. Okay.
So it actually
starts here. I misread my handwriting. Okay, verse 15. "You must not deal unjustly in judgment. You must neither show partiality to the poor nor honor the rich. You must judge your fellow citizen fairly. You must not go about as a slanderer among your people. You must not stand idly by when your neighbor's life is at stake. I am the Lord. You must not hate your brother in your heart. You must surely reprove your fellow citizen so that you do not incur sin on account of him. You must not take vengeance or bear a grudge against the children of your people, but you must love your neighbor as yourself. I am the Lord." Here ends the reading. And Psalm 1.
Yes. Go for it.
"How blessed is the one who does not follow the advice of the wicked, or stand in the pathway with sinners, or sit in the assembly of scoffers. Instead, he finds pleasure in obeying the Lord's commands. He meditates on his commands day and night. He is like a tree planted by flowing streams. It yields its fruit at the proper time, and its leaves never fall off. He succeeds in everything he attempts. Not so with the wicked. Instead, they are like wind-driven chaff. For this reason, the wicked cannot withstand judgment, nor can sinners join the assembly of the godly. Certainly the Lord guards the way of the godly, but the way of the wicked ends in destruction." Here ends the reading.
Well,
Leviticus, a curious sojourn
I think
into Leviticus. It must tie in with...
I think so. I mean, I think it's just
maybe.
we've got the second of the 2 great commandments, right?
Mm.
So, though it does tie in. Yep. We'll see when we get to Matthew. Jesus lists the 2 great commandments.
So they give us the opening, "You must be holy because I, the Lord your God, am holy." And this is deep in the middle of kind of the moral giving of the moral law. And so there's a lot of things, but they want to spotlight this relationship with neighbor.
Yeah, and in many ways in many ways Leviticus 19 feels like this sort of taking the 10 commandments and letting them breathe a little bit. I mean, we have not all necessarily, but we have very brief things within the first half of Leviticus 19, things like do not steal, do not lie, do not swear falsely by my name, and so profane the name of the Lord your God. I am the Lord. So these things that feel like they are revisiting the Ten Commandments.
Right.
And some have explanations.
Maybe offering commentary.
Yeah, a little bit. And then, of course, we come to what is kind of the verse that drew the lectionary here, which is love your neighbor as yourself. And I think...
Okay, where are you looking at
that? That would be the second half of verse 18, Leviticus 19:18.
Yes, thank you.
Yeah, sure, no problem. It's weird because it's
and I
tucked
said
in
it.
as the
I
second.
read it.
You
I just
did. How did they phrase it differently there or something?
No, you must love your neighbor as yourself.
Okay,
No.
there you go. I'm always keen to point out when people come to that, to notice that actually, because sometimes the anemic version of love that we have in our minds is let people do what they want, and there's a degree to which we need to let people do what they want. That's appropriate. But also alongside this is this statement that you are not to hate a fellow Israelite in your heart, but also that you are to rebuke your neighbor frankly so that you will not share in their guilt. I find it fascinating that not in a, hey, you're outside our group and I'm going to tell you what's up, but rather those who are inside the Israelites, those who are self-identifying as living by the Lord's law, that for somebody in there who disobeys the Lord, the call is actually to rebuke them, and also don't hate them in your heart. It's an interesting combination.
There may be paired. I mean, it's not clear from the grammar, but I think there's a sense of reprove without hating.
That's exactly what I mean.
Yeah.
So the call is to reprove without hating, and that is actually the lead into loving your neighbor as yourself. So it's interesting. I would not put a short, solid line between the two, but that part of loving a neighbor, your neighbor as yourself, is also being willing when it's appropriate to rebuke them in love.
It is. And we see other things here too.
Yes.
Not dealing unjustly.
Yeah.
No partiality toward poor or rich.
Mm-hmm.
So a commitment to honesty and fairness, not going around slandering, not standing idly by when your neighbor's life is at stake.
Yeah.
So all of these, I think, relate to communal life in many ways.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
And the ones you mentioned, and then we also have not bearing a grudge against future generations.
Yeah. Yeah. And it's interesting, I think I've mentioned it on one episode in the past, but a different friend who's an Old Testament scholar, anyways, I was going to offer his name, and I thought, I don't know if he'd want that or not. But he pointed out that this phrase, love your neighbor as yourself, could mean, we tend to think of that as to love somebody who's other than me as well as I love myself. And he was saying that actually in ancient Near East, like how they would have read that would have been more along the lines of somebody who's not one of you, who's not part of the Israelites, but who is a neighbor outside of your own group, to love them as one of your group.
Oh, that's
so
interesting.
Essentially the command was to the Israelites to love the other nations as if they were Israelites.
Oh, that's interesting.
And
that does fit in with some of the other instructions preceding in 19 about gleaning, leaving for the poor and the foreigner, not
that's a good
oppressing
point.
Neighbors, not withholding wages, the ones I accidentally read, like not taking advantage of people with disabilities. And also makes me think maybe we'll get this in the passage today. No, where is it? Where it's, kind of what credit is it to you if you kind of love those who you're friends with?
Right.
So there is a more challenging.
Yeah. I mean, I think my friend who is, 100 times the Old Testament scholar I am, he pushed that out there with a whole lot of I don't know, like caveats,
wondering at it,
which is why I'm not even naming him, because I think he'd probably want to say, well, hang on, and it does
with nuance.
it struggles contextually, because you also have in verse 17 this pairing of do not hate a fellow Israelite in your heart, rebuke your neighbor frankly, and it seems like those are being equated, fellow Israelite and neighbor in that context. So then if this other context, neighbor is meant to be someone who is specifically not an Israelite, that's challenging. But
well, I think
there's something to
when
wonder
we
about
think
there.
of all the regulations here, because if you want to tackle Leviticus, it's an interesting exercise. I think it's a place where often people bog down, if they're thinking about reading through the Bible. You get here and it can be hard going, but you do see that there were expectations to care for those outside of Israel. Absolutely.
There were.
That was part of the communal life.
And it's kind of astounding that in this list, where you, like what you just identified, that for a lot of people, the bogging down spot, it's from that Jesus pulls one of the two greatest commandments, where a lot of people maybe would have glossed over that he's kind of found this thing as one of the two hooks upon which all the law and prophets hang, right? That's fascinating to me.
Well, and then Psalm 1, of course.
Psalm 1 is great.
Beautiful imagery.
Though, again, periodically I'm kind of going, the NET translation, the Psalms, I struggle with it in the Psalms, but
it's kind of like reading the NASB. Some of the passages can feel wooden, but I still will always do it for the translator's notes. I'm always putting plugs for those.
And it's good. I mean, I think when it breaks the kind of poetic flow or what my brain is expecting, it forces me to listen a little harder.
I
and
think
sometimes
it's
that's helpful.
It's always helpful, I think, to switch up translations periodically.
Yeah.
Because you do read a little bit differently.
Yeah, I think so.
Anything from the Psalm, or?
I mean, I just kind of, I like it. I mean, I like that the whole Psalter begins with Psalm 1, and the very first word of it all is Asher, this idea of happy. I'm pretty sure it's Asher and not Baruch. I'm pretty sure it's this idea of happy is the one. Yeah. Happy is the one who's not walked in the counsel of the wicked. It's just to me that the whole book of Psalms begins with happiness.
Yeah.
And happiness in
NET's going to say, oh, the happiness of the man.
I love that. I think the NLT says, I want to find it. I'll find it. While you talk about it.
Yeah. What have I noted? I've written some notes here of things that struck me in the past. Let's see. They have a translator note from They've chosen to translate, who does not follow the advice of the wicked or stand in the pathway of the sinners or sit in the assembly of the scoffers. But the grammar is really envisioning a progression from walk, stand, sit among. So from sort of casual association to complete identification.
Well, to sit would have been kind of to rule in their place.
Yeah,
right?
And the advice or counsel, to walk in the advice of the wicked would mean to allow their evil advice to impact, this is from the NET translation notes I'm quoting, to allow their evil advice to impact and determine one's behavior. So I think that's interesting because, I don't know, this is one where it's, I think, easy to read. And I don't know, what images come to mind when you read this? Because it's a stretch, I think, but it's there for me to ask the question of, what advice do I sit among, and, to think of it. It's such a vivid imagery of walking and then this tree that we get in the Psalm. But
to me, I think it's the pairing is important. So you start with, it's verse 1 and verse 2. You need both halves. So verse 1 is saying, those who are not following the advice of the wicked, standing around with sinners, joining in or sitting in the seat of mockers. But the other half of the equation is, but rather they delight in the law of the Lord, and upon it they
finds
meditate
pleasure.
both day
I did
and night.
like that.
I love the the happy are they who, the New Living Translation, it's my favorite for this, because it says, oh, the joys of those who do not. So, oh, the joys is my favorite ashrei from that, from the Hebrew. Oh, the joys.
Well, and man,
but the pairing
that'll
is
preach,
important.
because when you think of this progression, walk, stand, sit,
Mm-hmm.
Like walking with the wicked, okay, standing with the sinners, but who? Sitting with the scoffers.
Ugh.
I mean, scoffers, or the NET notes, the arrogant, the people who
There is no joy there.
who love conflict and reject wisdom.
Yeah.
And I don't know, that's a timely word.
It's sad. I mean, it's deeply unappealing. It's tragic is the word I want. You know?
It's tragic and so easy. I mean, I think
Oh yeah.
culturally we opt for this. Sometimes we admire it,
Yeah.
you know,
I mean,
or we justify it so easily.
Yeah. I have my misgivings with the book, but it makes me think of Pilgrim's Progress and how
It's been
many
ages since I've read it.
That's probably okay. But how many, not to dog the very book I'm highlighting here, but it has a place. But yeah, many times because it is the Christian life is envisioned as an actual journey in that, yeah, there's many opportunities for him to wander off the path, to sit,
meet up with scoffers,
to affiliate,
or something, probably,
absolutely,
yeah.
to choose whether or not to walk among them or to walk alone, or whether to like sit and lie down and take some rest in a place that's not good. So, yeah. But I am grateful that the Psalm has both verse 1 and verse 2, that it's not just saying, hey, make sure you don't be with bad people. That's not good. The point is not actually to avoid the troublesome people out there. The point is that there's no space for that because this person is instead delighting in the law of the Lord, meditating on it both day and night.
Exactly. Well, and I think it's an observation. I mean, yes, there's some nuance
great. It's
of
like a
command
wisdom
here, but
literature
it
piece.
is. It's sort of saying, hey, it will be happier for you. You know, this will turn out better for you. This you will be so happy.
Well, and this is
you will be so glad. You know,
this is exactly how verse 4 opens. This is pulling on, working with the Hebrew years back, but I'm pretty positive that verse 4, when it says not so the wicked or but not the wicked, I'm pretty sure it actually says like, oi, the wicked.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure it's some sort of like outcry. I'm going to find out here. I can dig that around. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe it's actually like lo, the wicked.
But yeah.
Lo meaning not in Hebrew. I think maybe I'm wrong.
Okay.
But
so yeah, I think that it's just kind of a observation there for us to aspire to.
Yeah.
Should we want to be the happy one?
Yeah.
But yes, very familiar passage. This is one of the early. One of our children, I think, memorized this, and so when I read it, I see a very hand motions. Anyway,
yeah, I'm wrong. By the way, I did a quick look, and I'm wrong. It's not that. Must be thinking of something else. I don't know what it is.
Delete that.
Delete.
If we were editing,
people,
we would edit it out.
Would you please unlisten to that?
All right, we're turning over to 1 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 8.
I don't know why it feels kind of fun to me that we're in Thessalonians. Thessalonians feels like one of the forgotten epistles of Paul or something. So I don't know. Maybe that just is me revealing how little I've read it.
Well, and I think we're picking up exactly where we left off. I think we read chapter 1.
We read all of chapter 1 last time.
So here we are at the opening of chapter 2.
Yeah, we get through about half of chapter 2. Here we go. So 1 Thessalonians 2, 1 through 8. You know, brothers and sisters, that our visit to you was not without results. We had previously suffered and been treated outrageously in Philippi, as you know. But with the help of God, we dared to tell you his gospel in the face of strong opposition. There we go. For the appeal we make does not spring from error or impure motives, nor are we trying to trick you. On the contrary, we speak as those approved by God to be entrusted with the gospel. We are not trying to please people, but God, who tests our hearts. You know we never used flattery, nor did we put on a mask to cover up greed. God is our witness. We were not looking for praise from people, not from you or anyone else, even though as apostles of Christ we could have asserted our authority. Instead, we were like young children among you. Just as a nursing mother cares for her children, so we cared for you. Because we loved you so much, we were delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well. Here ends the reading.
I love the personal nature of that.
Mm-hmm.
NET translates it because you had become dear to us. The end, this sort of
because we loved you so much.
Because we loved you so much. Well, and of course, that nursing mother imagery hits.
Have you
close to home. I've spent some hours
seen
doing
one
that.
before or heard of one? Yeah.
But when I think it also shows Paul when he wanted to reach for an image of what it meant to share not just nourishment, but one's own life and body. That's what he reached for. And I think that's intentional because nursing mothers are nourishing with their body, sharing their life in that sense.
As he says in the NIV, delighted to share with you not only the gospel of God, but our lives as well, our own selves as well. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's exactly what is going on there. And I appreciate that he's playing both sides of the metaphor.
Right.
In the sense that he's saying, instead, we were like young children among you, which just is deeply resonant with the spirit and preaching of Christ.
Right.
He's like, unless you become like a child, you can't enter the kingdom of heaven. And he's saying, we were among you in that way, that fashion, as young children. And also, we were among you as a mother who nurses her children.
Nurturing and nourishing.
It's all very, very tender, vulnerable, sweet imagery, isn't it?
It is. And I think taking him at his word, that's noteworthy. He's contrasting with this. We could have imposed our weight as apostles. We could have come with our title. We could have come with flattering speech. We could have come with some pretext for greed, which are all things we see, in the failure moments of the church. We do see leaders operating this way, right? And so to think, what was it like that they came as little children? I want to know. I want to see the video clip of that,
Well, and it's I think it's meant to be in stark contrast to these false teachers and preachers who are in the midst of the Christians in Thessalonica. I think he's saying our appeal to you, unlike theirs, is the parenthetical implicit parenthetical. Our appeal to you, unlike theirs, does not spring from error or impure motives, nor are we trying to trick you. I think he's saying and he says our was the opening. Our visit to you was not without results. In other words, God did work among us when we were there, and we took a risk. Previously, we'd been terribly treated in Philippi. We should have been wise and not risked it with you, but we did, because that's what's important to it. I mean, it's just Paul's saying when we saw you, we didn't look at you and see kind of like, some good financial and prestigious opportunity for us. We saw risk. Like we saw that we would probably get mistreated again, just like we had in Philippi. There's nothing self-seeking in what we did among you, Thessalonians. And so hold that as a strong contrast to those who are coming and preaching something different than the gospel in an unworthy way.
Well, and I think this is not his point in saying this to the original audience, but when I think of our current moment where so many people have exited the church and are injured because they have sat under leaders who have sought glory from people, who have imposed their weight and been domineering, who have flattered with their speech or gotten greedy. It can be hard. It can be so hard to trust again. It's lovely to think of what he offers as the antidote for those of us who are in the church or in positions of leadership or ministry to say, this is the heart that's safe for people, to come like a little child, to come like a nursing mother who's nourishing. There's no power. There's dependence there in that image, dependence for nourishment, but that's not a glamorous position.
And
it's a vulnerable, connected position, right? It's a mutuality there.
There's sort of a odd irony in the fact that, you're describing people who have their original, we might say, encounter with a church leader was toxic or traumatic or something. And so then they don't want to trust what we might say a good leader who comes along perhaps afterward, we hope.
Yeah.
In Paul's case, in the Thessalonians case, he's pointing out it's the flip of that. He's like,
they'd had them.
You had a good leader, and that led you to this sort of undiscerning trust of the next people who came along.
Well, and who were the next people? Where help us connect with that? Where are you?
I think that is, I don't know if it's been said directly yet, but it's, I think, a very clear indication from Paul as he goes into chapter 2. I think everything we just read, and the message generally of all to me, chapter 2.
I didn't know if there was a specific thing where you were saying, okay, here's where we get.
Totally. There in other epistles, we have things like that, right? Where he's directly calling out false preachers and stuff, false teachers. But no, in this one, I think it's just implicit in chapter 2, what we read there.
Okay.
Yeah. I think that's because like, if you ask why, what is Paul answering, so to speak, in going in the direction he goes, it seems to me clear that that's what it is.
Okay.
The last thing I have about this is I just thought it was interesting that he said in verse 5, we never used flattery, nor did we put on a mask to cover up greed. God is our witness. It just makes me think of last week's gospel lesson when the Pharisees and Herodians, or rather the disciples of the Pharisees and Herodians, it's so ugly when they go, oh, true teacher who teaches the truth.
Right. Nothing like that. No manipulation. And certainly with this imagery of children and nursing, there's just no manipulation there. There's no gain. Yeah. Well, always with things like this in the epistles, it draws me to go to the book of Acts and say, okay, what's the origin story for the church in Thessalonica? And if you're curious about that, you can find that in chapter 17.
Yeah, thanks
if you remember in Philippi, they are in prison. They go to the women who are gathered. They start the church in Philippi with Lydia. They're there for a while. Paul and Silas get dragged into prison. That's the one where they're singing hymns in the middle of the night, and they have a miraculous release, and the jailer's converted, and the church grows, and they stay there for a while before departing. So at Thessalonica, Thessalonica, I never know which.
Either way,
Paul goes to the synagogue, as was his custom. Some were persuaded to believe. God-fearing Greeks were persuaded as well. So some from the synagogue, God-fearing Greeks, and a large group and a few prominent women. But some of the Jews in the area who weren't the part of the synagogue that believed gathered together. The NET says worthless men from the rabble in the marketplace. So maybe just formed a mob together and set the city into an uproar to get Paul and Silas. So maybe we talked about this last week too, but this is important context. So they experienced great opposition there, and so would the people they left behind, right? Jason was thrown in prison there. So the people, for very few who first initially believed in Thessalonica would have probably been undergoing opposition, or what a start to your church if you're like, here the leader comes and there's a riot and we're in danger. So I think that context nightmare is always helpful.
Yeah, I'm actively working with a group of people to explore the idea of planting a church nearby. And there's nearby, it's about an hour south. And
they're wanting to plant a church.
There's a group of people wanting to, and I'm working with someone else to lead them through that process and explore it. And it's amazing how many logistical pieces you're trying to just fit together just to make a meeting happen. And could you imagine though, if it's like,
people are so angry
to do that, the cost is that, you've got like civic authorities trying to jail you and stuff like that. I mean, how quickly do you want to give up? So quickly. Yeah. So pretty amazing to think when you actually think what they endured.
Especially when you think that this is not a one-off, like a lot of time just before Paul and Silas were in prison, just before. And if you just feel like these, and in some instances, the people follow them from city to city, that's such strong opposition.
Absolutely. Well, you've got our gospel text.
I do. Okay, yes, please. And this is from Matthew.
Last week I said I was sad that it didn't go on and do Jesus's, marvelous answer to the Sadducees. That, though, is all that stands between last week and this week.
Okay.
just insert that in your head. He just confounded the Herodians and the Pharisees in one moment, and then confounded the Sadducees in another.
They're neither married. They neither marry nor are given in marriage. Is his response?
That was the Sadducees part. Yeah.
The crowds are amazed at his teaching, and here we go with verse 34. Now, when the Pharisees heard that he had silenced the Sadducees, they assembled together, and one of them, an expert in religious law, asked him a question to test him. Teacher, which commandment in the law is the greatest? Jesus said to him, Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, and with all your mind. This is the first and greatest commandment. The second is like it. Love your neighbor as yourself. All the law and the prophets depend on these two commandments. While the Pharisees were assembled, Jesus asked them a question. What do you think about the Christ? Whose son is he? They said, the son of David. He said to them, How then does David by the Spirit call him Lord, saying, The Lord said to my Lord, Sit at my right hand until I put your enemies under your feet. If David then calls him Lord, how can he be his son? No one was able to answer him a word, and from that day on, no one dared to question him any longer. Here ends the reading.
Yeah.
So what do you think is behind this test?
Oh, yeah.
Because the Caesar one, I can understand, trying to get him in trouble politically. The Sadducees feels like trying to best him, kind of like, here's one. Let's see what you do with this. What do you think is going on here? Matthew wants us to know this is an expert in the religious law.
Yeah.
NET says traditionally a lawyer. So this is someone who's an expert in the interpretation of the Mosaic law.
Yep.
And he's there to test Jesus.
Well, it is, I think this is, first of all, as we said before, this is a standing question. And it was kind of considered an imponderable one. So the idea is that they've presented him with an impossible question to answer, that they've never been able to find the answer to the question, or at least it opens up a lot of debate. And when you can't conclusively, land an answer to a question, then it means that, like any sort of debate, there's countless people who have their own opinions. So the idea is whatever Jesus chooses is destined to have somebody. It's very much a repeat of the last test, which was, what do you think? Do you're gonna obey Caesar and therefore get in trouble with the religious leaders, or are you gonna reject Caesar and get in trouble with Caesar? And this is the same thing. It's like, pick a commandment so that we can all be upset about the one that you didn't pick. But Jesus does find they ask him, what is the greatest? And somehow in answering two great ones, he manages to cover all the bases, frankly. And I think that's pretty impressive here. So we have this idea that he's saying, love the Lord your God with all your heart, all your soul, and all your mind. And he says, this is the first and greatest commandment. I love that he puts that first, and it is. And they didn't ask for a second one, but he says, and the second is like it. So I love that he's essentially said it's not enough to boil it down to just one, because functionally it's like you can't effectively love God without obeying God's command to love your neighbor, to love others. And so I appreciate that once again, he has both answered their question and altered the trajectory of the question. So before it was like, pick one, pay Caesar or don't pay Caesar. And he's like, I pick a third way. And again, he's picked a third way by saying, you asked me for the greatest command, and I'm telling you the two. Yeah. But while still giving one prominence over the others. So
I think what's striking me as I read this is I'd be curious to know what the actual text says, but when 39 opens, the second is like it. What that like is doing there, is it making a comparison? I know it's not an equivocation, but what kind of like?
In what way is it like it?
In what way is it like it? Is it?
I think probably only in what he says in verse 40, that it's like it in a sense that all the law and the prophets hang on these two commandments.
On both of them.
It's like a source code for all the rest, right?
Yeah, it's interesting.
That in everything that God has commanded, he is trying to command people to either love him or to love each other. I guess is how I would.
Well, that's how I read it in general. Yeah. But I think, I don't know, this time hearing it, thinking, what does it mean that it is like it? Because I think they would have maybe expected the first one, don't you think? Or no?
I honestly think there's controversy around it. Like I said, what I've learned was that it's a long-standing question, even in their day. So it wasn't a new question. And that's why they brought it out. In the same way of like, pay taxes to Caesar or no. Right. That was not a novel question. These were questions, questions that they had found to be unanswerable and therefore could get you in trouble if you really picked an answer.
Right. And the answer would be revealing, maybe, of different loyalties or different things.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, and then he asks them a question,
which is so unusual, isn't it? It really catches your attention.
While the Pharisees were assembled, so this is right there. They're all gathered close to see if they got him.
Yep.
And he asks them a question, and it's a more open-ended question. What do you think about the Messiah?
I love it. He doesn't say.
It's not an either or.
Exactly. It's not a or B, take one, and I'm going to get you either way.
The follow-up, whose son is he?
Yeah, exactly.
Which is curious. And I wonder what they would have been going through their minds when they heard this question. Because you would have to think, I feel like the narrative portion here is giving us this kind of challenge, like battle of the words. And I don't know if that's what it would have felt like, or if this would have been like, there's an undercurrent of testing, but this would have been normal rabbinical conversation between rabbis. I don't know.
I do think so. But I think in a way, and this is total speculation, I think that Jesus is not in a one-upping, not in a dominating way. He is showing them that the currency that they value, that even in that currency, he is rich. Like if you want to do the whole rabbinical debate back and forth, he can play that game and win against them.
Or just
but he just does it in a way,
or I think,
you know what I mean? I mean that graciously.
Right. Not even in a win. I think in a, I do think there could be a bid for connection here of, again, like, okay, well, let's, again, like we talked about the parables of judgment being kind of last call invitations, a kindness of, all right, this is your way of connecting and engaging. Let's talk about the Messiah then. And again, a kind of revelation of, of course, we read it through those eyes, that would be clear. Yep. That's what he's saying. But I wonder, whenever these sort of things happen, it makes me want to know what the Jewish perspective on these verses would be. Mm-hmm. And I know this is the gospel and there's a different perspective on Jesus and the Messiah, but to even help understand what some of these dynamics are, or what would the Jewish perspective on this Psalm of David have been, and I don't know, things like this.
Yeah. I will on top of that suggest that it might be that at this point, actually winning at their game is a way not that Jesus is trying to flex on them, but again, just demonstrating that if that's the currency that they value, that he is rich in it, like that he is someone. I think it is a bid for connection in a way to show himself having prowess at the thing that they are invested in, not so that he can be like, haha,
gotcha.
I
got you, or
but
something.
Rather that he can be like, look,
you can still come to me. I can speak your language.
I'm good with, exactly. The things that you value so highly, I'm rich in. And so I do think I love it. Whose son is he? I love that their answer is just so bland. The son of David. I think they're kind of like, duh. That's not a debatable question. Unlike the one that we gave you, which is the greatest commandment. Pick from, what is it? I don't remember how many hundreds total, but pick from the.
I don't think it's less. We won't try and speak to that.
It's 100 and such. Pick from those. Whereas what he asks them is really straightforward. So I think it's kind of confusing when they go, "Whose son is he? He's the son of David." Right.
Well, and what do you think him picking this passage is saying? I feel like it's slippery. Like I can almost put my finger on it that he's also trying to make a statement about himself as the Messiah.
Yes.
What do you think is hidden in there for them? Like he's not just saying, "Oh, an interesting question, and let's talk about it."
No, totally. Okay, so in my opinion, what has happened here, the pairing is that they gave him what they felt was an incredibly complicated question. Mm-hmm. So many layers, so many data, so many things, you can't actually boil it down. And he gave them an incredibly simple answer. And they were kind of like, whoa. Then he gives them what they think is an incredibly simple question. Mm-hmm. And they give him the easy answer. And he points out that actually there's so much more to the answer than they've pondered. Mm-hmm. So he's flipping that dynamic on them. But the reason why that matters is because he himself is the Messiah standing in front of them. It's as if he's
the
saying,
son of David.
And it is more complicated than they understand. Such that if he could expand their understanding of the Messiah, then they would perhaps come to understand that the Messiah is standing in front of them. But because for them that answer is such a tiny answer, that question has such a tiny answer, it's not big enough to include Jesus. And I think that's where that's the kind of interesting flip that's happening here, where they go, here's a huge question. He goes, actually, it's a very simple concept. And he says, here's this thing you think is simple. They go, yes, it's simple. He goes, actually, it's very big. It includes me. That's where my mind goes with all that.
And again, I think we can read this with Christian eyes of, of course, Jesus was the Son of God and the incarnation and these different historic Christian doctrines. But this is astonishing, right? To indicate that
it's also
the
huge.
Son of David would be the Lord, in this flip way. So no wonder that they did not answer and did not question anymore any longer.
Well, what a passage.
Yes. What would you preach on here if you were doing this one? Or are you? Maybe you are.
I don't think I am. It's pretty grand, the end of Moses. And I mean, you've also got Psalm 1.
And we've spent a long time in Ordinary Time with Moses by this point. If you've been doing track 1, we've been with Moses for quite a while.
I'd pass on Thessalonians just because we've got it for a while, I think.
Right.
I would
and it's small, unless you could maybe expand it.
Right. I'd grab...
Thessalonians is a great book, though, if you
it's a great
want
book.
To... the lectionary gives these moments where you could do like a book study for a couple weeks.
You just have to bear in mind that All Saints is going to interrupt it.
Yeah.
If you don't have a special All Saints service on All Saints Day, then it transfers over to the following Sunday. Yeah. Which is true of most churches. But for me, I mean, the Matthew passage is pretty great, right?
Yep.
So I don't know, you got some good picking this week.
Mm-hmm. And the Psalms are both lovely.
Psalm 1, I mean, come on.
Psalm 1,
that's
Psalm
grand.
90.
Oh man, Psalm 90. Preach them all, people. Preach them all. Okay, friends. Well, it's time for us to close. And I feel like you did the opening call, so I get to close.
Please close us in prayer.
Brothers and sisters, let's pray together. Almighty and everlasting God, increase in us the gifts of faith, hope, and charity, that we may obtain what you promise. Make us love what you command. Through Jesus Christ our Lord, who lives and reigns with you and the Holy Spirit, one God forever and ever. Amen.
Amen.
You could probably preach on that collect too. It's a good one.
It also is lovely.
Well, friends.
As always, thanks for joining us. Mm-hmm. It was a delight.
It was. Are you going to say that? We'll see you next time? Or am I going to say it?
We'll see you next time. We'll catch you. We'll talk to you next time.
With the lectionary. Thanks for being with us.
Water level rising, levee almost broke. All the politicians have gone up in smoke. You take up your cross, I'll take mine. We'll go up to higher ground and wait out the time. Jesus, don't pass us by. Jesus, don't tarry. say you won't return. Jesus, it might as well be tonight. We should not be troubled, for the Bible does say war, tribulation will greet the final day. Brother, share the gospel, sister, do the same. Sing a saintly chorus till we join that refrain. Jesus, don't pass us by. Jesus, don't tarry now. Some say